$80 for water? Oh. God, what am I going to do? I don't have the money to cover any of this. Wow. The IRS. This is going to be good. The IRS makes mistakes? They owe me $10,000? Thank you, God! I can get that bass boat. I can get a 50-inch TV. I can get 5 TVs. Oh, God, what an answer to prayer. Reality.
I hope we saved the outtakes of what it took to get that one scene there. Boy, reality slaps, they're tough. Anybody like to be slapped by reality? Yeah, neither do I. Man, it hurts, and it never fails to just kind of erode any confidence that you have in a situation, and it hurts. Did I say it hurts? Man, it just is a slap in the face quite often when we get slapped by reality, and it always precedes an understanding. Sometimes we understand it, that we need to have a shift in our reality. Either something that we are doing is not working out the way it's supposed to work out. Maybe it's not the way God desires for it to work out. And we need those slaps in the face. We need those shifts in reality in order to get us back on course. And whenever it happens, I don't know about you, but my first response isn't to say, "Oh, thank you so much." That's not my first response. My first response is normally to blame somebody else and try to push the blame on my stupidity towards someone else. And yet, those shifts in reality, those reality slaps, whatever you want to call it, are always leads to a great period of growth in my life. Every time I've gone through one of those things, it has caused me to shift some thinking and generally leads to a great period of growth within my life. So not all pain is hurtful. Not all discomfort is bad in our life. Quite often that tension, that discomfort leads to something that is very productive in our life. And that's what this series is all about. Oh, does that sound a little bit like Boris Karloff? Type of laugh, you know? This series is all about a shift of reality that needs to take place in the very core of our life. And I know that some of the things we're going to be talking about this morning is going to be offensive to you. I know that going in. And I know that you may walk out of here, this is just kind of a disclaimer, you may walk out being upset or mad, and you know what? That's all right also. If the slap kind of causes you to have a little shift in your thinking, and it will lead to a greater period of growth within your life. Now, the reason what I'm going to be talking about is going to be offensive is because I'm going to talk to you about something you probably think you already do well already, but you don't. And so because of that, it may be offensive to you. And I'm going to talk to you about this week or last week, and especially next week is a very practical plan. I know it's the Sunday after Thanksgiving. I really would urge you not to sleep in with the turkey hangover, but to be here because next week is going to be incredibly practical for your life in order to make this reality shift. But I want to talk to you about how to be generous. Now, so just so you'll know where we're going with this, when I say generosity, generosity is not just random acts of giving. Random acts of giving are good, And I want to say you're really good at it. Random acts of giving is whenever you see a need or a need is made known that you respond. And this congregation responds extremely well with this. And we give to that need. But that's not generosity. That is random acts of giving. And random acts of giving are good. I don't want you to stop doing that. I love random acts of giving. I love the opportunity to do that. But that is not generosity. But you're so good at the random acts of giving, I was hesitant to even do this series because if you're new here or you're watching us online this morning and you're thinking, is he going to talk about money? I am. And I know that how that makes people nervous. And sometimes I know people online right now are going, well, I'm checking out of here, find another service I can listen to this morning. And some of you are thinking, is there a way for me to get up and walk out very quietly without disturbing everybody? Because he's going to be talking about money. Maybe I can just count the lights. I wonder how many lights are in this building. I've done those sorts of things when people talk about money, so I know what's going on in your head, all right? And that's not the desired result this morning, but I know that that's a strong urge within you right now. And so here's the thing you need to know. This congregation, and if you're sitting here maybe for the first time or one of the few first times that you've been here, you are surrounded by people who are extraordinarily good at random acts of giving. And maybe this is why this is a good timing because of the season and things. I don't want you to stay just in being good at random acts of giving. I want you to learn to be generous. And so here in the midst of a season, Thanksgiving, Christmas, when we talk about generosity and giving, I thought this was a perfect time for us to say, first of all, thank you for the random acts of giving. You're really, really good at it. Our community pantry, the people there tell me that we generally lead the way in giving each month as far as to the community pantry. You've had an awesome response to the Bedlam Battle. We're going to be talking about our Christmas offering here in a week or so. You're good at that, and I want you to continue to be good at that. But I want you to learn how to organize your entire financial world around generosity. So when I say generosity, here's what I mean. And as I said last week, I know this is a clunky definition, but that's what you get. I'm clunky, all right? It's not spiffy, but here's the definition. Generosity, here it goes, clunky. A I've already been premedicated this morning. That's the reason I'm doing this, all right? Premeditated, meaning it's planned out ahead of time. Generosity is a planned event, all right? It's also calculated. In other words, the amount you've thought of beforehand is generally a percentage. You calculate it out. Designated, meaning that there is a primary place that your giving goes towards, your generosity goes towards. But not only is it designated, it's an emancipation. I love that word. Emancipation means you're going to set it free, all right? You're going to set free your personal financial assets, all right? So generosity is a premeditated, calculated, designated emancipation of your personal financial assets. This is a series talking about living a generous life, not with your time, not with your talent, but with your treasure. It's learning to be generous with, he's going to say it, your money, all right? You guys are not laughing very much this week, you know? In many ways, living a generous lifestyle is different than simply giving. I think you realize this, but most of our giving comes as a result of being inspired to do something, right? We see on TV, you know, some sad pictures of some great music behind. I'm not being too sarcastic here, but we have those things in the background and we go, I've just got to give so that dog won't have to stay in that kennel that many more days. And then they show a cat and you say, I'm not going to give that at all, okay? At least that's what I do, all right? Now, so that's one way. Or somebody like me gets up and got a microphone, got a big voice, don't have that this morning, but got a big voice, and I can guilt you into giving. I mean, I can put the screws on you, and you're going to pull out the wallet and give, or you see other people around you pulling out their wallet, and you don't want to be the last one to pull out your wallet, so you pull out your wallet and you give. And so we do those sorts of things, but that's not generosity. Generosity is organizing your entire financial world around that concept. It's a completely different thing. Generous people have a plan. Generous people, when it comes to random acts of giving, they see it. Sometimes they say, yeah, that's something that I need to get to. But because they have a plan, because it's premeditated, they sometimes say, no, I'm not going to do that. And there's no guilt involved. That's the cool thing. There's no guilt involved because they have this plan. It's designated. It's calculated out ahead of time. And that's generous. And that's what I'm talking about when I'm talking about generosity. Now, here's my promise that I made last week. I'm going to give it to you again. Here's the promise I make about this series, all right? When you organize your life around generosity, these things will happen in your life. You will give more, you will save more, and you'll consume less. That's my promise to you. You will give more, you will save more, and you consume less. But Jesus has even better promise for you, all right? We talked about this last week, but there's a verse that you have heard all your life. You've probably quoted it. You didn't even know it came from Jesus. You didn't know it was in the Bible. But the verse is found in Acts chapter 20, verse 35, and it says, "It is more blessed to give than to receive." And we all say that, and there's times when at Christmas time we help somebody out or we see somebody in need and we do that and we go, they say thank you, and we say, well, it's just more blessed to give and receive. And we mean that because it gives this great feeling inside of us. I mean, it's a wonderful feeling to have. But we also know that, of course, this happened when we were younger. It doesn't happen when we get more mature. But we also know it's really fine to receive too, right? I mean, don't we have, when we were younger at Christmas time, we went around to check how many packages under the tree had James's name on it or whatever your name was on it? Because we know, I mean, in the scheme of things, it's more blessed to give, but it's pretty blessed to receive. We kind of like that. Can I get an amen on that? It's not wrong. It's true. It's just reality, all right? The reality is we believe it's fun to receive and it's blessed to give. Blessed, what is that? It's one of those crazy words that only crazy Christians use, right? Now, sometimes, achoo, what do you say? Bless you, all right? And we have no clue what that means, all right? Sometimes, as I said last week, we say to people who just aren't getting it, well, bless their hearts, right? I never want you to say when you walk out of here, bless his heart. That was a sermon. I don't want you to say that, all right? It just simply means someone's doesn't have all of his oars in the water, all right? They're cut off or something, okay? The word blessed is a word that we don't understand very well, all right? Another translation of the Greek word is makarios that Jesus uses in the Sermon on the Mount, and it means fortunate or well off, or maybe I had somebody say it means a soul satisfaction. There's a sense in which your soul, deep down inside of you, something just seems to be satisfied because of carrying out that command in your life. Or sometimes it can mean, like Doug Donacy, happy, 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 all right? So whenever you are, Jesus says, here's his promise to you, if you give, because it's more blessed, your soul's going to have a satisfaction. You're going to be happy, 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 all right? Yeah. I believe, or that Jesus says, when you orient your life around generosity, you're going to have a happier life. I don't know of anyone who is generous that's unhappy. There is a soul satisfaction about them. There is a sense of contentment about them. That the world just doesn't shake with whatever comes about within their life. So that's Jesus' promise. You're going to be happy, 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 happy. My promise is you will give more, you will save more, and you'll consume less, all right? So there's something that I want you to hear that you'll probably not believe, all right? And since that is true, I'm going to spend about the next 10 minutes trying to convince you that it is. That's where we're going with this morning, all right? So whenever I talk about that dreaded word, money, 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 money. I thought of all kinds of songs I could sing to you this morning, but I won't do it because there's just not enough time for you to hear my golden voice. There are other things I'm deceived about also. Okay, so money, all right? Whenever we talk about the word money, or finances, there is something that happens in our life. I read this about 2 years ago, and I don't know about this, and I kept reading more and more statistics about it, that most of what Western people, primarily Americans, worry about, more than anything else is money. And the word most associated with money and finances is this one word. It's the word worry, okay? Worry. I won't raise your hands, but I'm guessing 100% of you at some time or another have worried about your finances. And I would suppose probably right now at this particular time, you may be worried about your finances, all right? So here's what happens. When we start talking about money, when we look at our own financial situation, we worry about it. Now, this is what statistically says happens within the Western world. When we worry about finances and things, there's something that the Western world does that sometimes some of the other parts of the world do not, but they are catching up with us, all right? Here's what happens when we worry. We worry that we're not going to have enough. We worry that we're not going to be able to buy certain things. And so what happens is we've got to feel good about ourselves, and we say, well, I'm so into this tight financial situation, I'm so worried about it, I deserve to go out and buy myself a new pair of shoes or a new something, whatever it might be. So we spend money that we're worried about in order to purchase something that we think is going to make us feel better about ourselves and ease the worry a little bit. And what happens is we don't just spend the money that we make, we spend, in the United States anyway, more than we make. And you say, well, how is that possible? How is that possible? Well, by courtesy of Visa, MasterCard, and Discover Card, we are now able to spend money that we don't have, all right? And we leverage our future as a result of that. And so we go out and we spend some money on this, and more than we make, and what that creates within our life is debt. It's getting really quiet in here, okay? All right, create debt, all right? Some debt is good debt. Consumer debt, personal debt is generally not so good, because what happens is we spend that money we don't have, so we put it on credit, and often we spend longer time paying off what we bought than there is usefulness in what we have. In other words, we buy a car, and if we're not careful, the moment we buy the car and drive it off the lot, it's worth less than what we owe on it, okay? We've had some problems with that. Many have who've had a wreck, and all of a sudden we're upside down, and the insurance and you go, how can this be? It's because it's worth less than what you're on. And that gets especially true whenever we spend it on, to feel better, consumable goods that we don't have anymore, and 3 years later we're still paying 25% interest on. And so we go into debt, all right? And so what happens then when we go into debt? Well, before long, something comes up within us. We have an emergency. Our car breaks down. Something happens to the house, and we have to spend some money to be able to repair that issue. We get ill, we go into the hospital or something of that nature, and we go to try to find out if we have some money to be able to pay those bills. Even if we have insurance, everybody knows there's such a thing as co-payment, there's out-of-pocket expenses, yada, 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 all those sorts of things. And we look to find if we have any margin to do that with. But because our debt has eaten up that margin, we don't have margin anymore. And what do we do whenever we don't have margin and we have an emergency for it? We go back and we put more zeros on the debt side, and so that creates less margin, which creates more worry. Isn't that the cycle? That's called the insanity cycle. Okay, it's just insane. And what happens when we don't have that margin? Not only do we put more debt on, the other thing is it increases our worry quite a bit. What am I going to do? I mean, will I be able to buy groceries? Will I be able to make the car payment that I bought to make me feel better? What will I do? And so what do we do when we worry? We spend more. And what do we do when we spend more? We go deeper in debt, which creates less margin, and we worry some more. And the cycle just goes over and over and over and over again. And that cycle, that insanity cycle that we get into, crushes our ability to be generous, because we can't be generous anymore. Our life is not organized around generosity. Our life is organized around making payments. Our life is worried about whether or not we can get some consumable good that we want to have within our life. And we end up with what we might call dumb debt, all right? And so we have no longer we have any type of financial margin within our life at all. So, and if there's no financial wiggle room, what do? We worry. What happens when we worry? We go spend. It just goes on and on and on and on and on. And the reason, you know what we worry about more than anything else? Future consumption. Will I be able to buy this? I really want this, but I'm all upside down and I can't go anything, but I want to consume it. I've got to have a new jacket to go to the party, and you go on and on and on. And so I'm worried about future consumption, so we spend, again, more than we consume. And our debt grows even larger, and there's less margin. And once again, what happens with our whole situation? We go back into it. And the margin we're worried about is not the margin for emergencies. The margin that we're worried about is future consumption. I mean, really what I need to be really happy is I need to buy a boat. If I just had a boat, just think I could take the family skiing all 3 times of the year, you know, and I could go out and I could fish. I know I never have any time off, but because I'm working extra time to be able to do it, but I could have that boat and it look really nice in my driveway, and all my neighbors would be envious because of sarcasm. I know. Move on, James. Okay, so you're not laughing at that either, are you? So, a little nervous laughter. Okay, so this is the cycle that we get into it. So here's what the cycle's all about. There's an assumption we make, and it's called the consumption assumption, all right? The consumption assumption. And the consumption assumption is this: if it comes to me, it's for me. Everything I have, my paycheck, everything I earn, everything comes to me in my life, it's for me. And it's for me to consume, you know? And so what do I need in order to be able to consume more? I need more money to be able to do that. So let's just ask ourselves a couple of questions, all right? Let's just kind of break this down for just a second. How much more money do you need to be able to spend on things that you think you need, that you want? How much more money do we need in order to spend no more than we make? How much more money do we need? 10% more? 15% more? 25% more? Let's just say that tomorrow you go to work and they say, we're giving you a 25% raise this next year, and it's going to be retroactive. We're going to give you what you were 25% over the last year. You've done such an outstanding job. We're going to give you 25% more. Would that help? Maybe. Maybe not. And the reason it may not help is because if we got 25% more, guess what we would do with 25% more? We would spend it, right? I know I've got in my mind what 25% more would buy for me. There are certain things, just like in our video, bass boat, I could buy a big screen. I could buy 5 big screen TVs. I've only got 4 rooms in my house, but I could have 5 of them, all right? And so we've always got in our mind what we consume if we just have 15 or 20% more, whatever it is. How much more money would you need to be able to pay off your debt? 10% more? 15% more? 100% more? You know? How much more money would you need to quit using your credit card and carrying a balance on that credit card? No? 25%? No. The answer is way more money than you'll get at one time. Because what you carry with you is that habit. As your income goes up, so does your habits. And it's your insanity habits. It's those crazy habits you have. This is an issue that you have in your life. This issue right here doesn't require more money. It requires self-control in our life. This issue right here on debt, how much money more do we need? More than you can make. It's a contentment issue. It's the reason we keep going in deeper and deeper in debt is because we're not content with the things that we have. We believe that contentment is just around the corner. It's the next thing I buy. It's the next it that I can get. I get so into this in some ways in technology. I couldn't wait to have an iPhone 6, okay? Because my iPhone 4 was clunky. It wasn't cool. Other people had a 6. I buy an iPhone 6, and guess what's out in the market now? iPhone 7. I got to have it, I got to have it, I got to have it. And guess what? If I buy an iPhone 7 tomorrow, I'm not, but guess what it's going to happen? Before long, iPhone 8 is going to come out, right? And so the issue is not the debt that I incur to get that, it's a contentment issue of whether I'm going to have it, right? How much more money is it going to take for me to have financial margin in my life so that I can be able to save some for emergencies within my life? Is it going to be 15% more, 50% more, whatever it is? What's going to happen? If I go to work tomorrow and they raise my salary by 20%, you raise your salary 20%, would you put 20% more into savings? No, because it's a self-discipline issue within our life. It's a self-discipline issue because we don't do it. Why? Because our habits continue with us. And until we do something to crush that cycle, that assumption-consumption cycle within our life, all we're going to do is add zeros to the debt area and raise the worry within our life. Now, here's what I'm trying to say. There needs to be a shift in our reality, all right? Our reality is this craziness right here. This is our reality. This is where most of us live. In fact, the statistics say that 87% of Americans live in this type of unreality. It's in la-la land, okay? Because it can't sustain itself. Now, generous people have forsaken that consumption assumption. Generous people order their financial lives around generosity, not driven by this. They're not driven by the if I got it, it's for me type of idea. Or if I'm in a really good mood, if I've got it and I'm in a really good mood and you ask me to help in some situation, then I'll give it only if it doesn't affect my consumption lifestyle later on down the road. And so I can't give then. And that is the lifestyle that revolves around everything is mine and it's for me. And if you're a Christian, if you're a follower of Jesus, if you're not a follower of Jesus, you don't have to listen to this next statement at all. It's still true, but you don't have to listen to it, all right? If you're a Christian, Jesus has a word for that type of behavior or that kind of mindset in our life. It's not a nice word. It's called greed. None of us think we're greedy. I have never known anybody to wake up, look in their mirror and go, boy, I'm greedy today. We never think we're greedy. You know why? Because we think of greedy as being Bob Cratchit. He's in the basement counting his gold, signaling out little bits of coal for wait a minute, I guess it's Scrooge. No, Bob Cratchit was the other guy, wasn't it? I get my metaphors mixed up. Okay, so anyway, it's Scrooge in the basement counting out his gold. But that's not greed. That's not reality. Nobody does that. Greed is when we think everything is for me and my consumption. And there's got to be some way to break that. Greed is the person who has very little. The greed is the person who has a medium amount. Greed is the person who's rich but assumes it all belongs to him for them. And that's all. And that's what Jesus calls greed. Now, do you know where greed leads? Greed always leads to discontent. I don't care how many zeros you put on the backside of your income, it always leads to discontent. Now, most financial worries, most financial tension, most financial grief is the result of worrying and wanting something that we don't presently have. I didn't say it's something we need. It's worried about something we don't have and we want. And it's about what we want, not what we need. And most of our financial acts is not about needing something. It's we think we need it. I gotta have it, I gotta have it, I gotta have it, I gotta have it. I've got this income, I've gotta have it, I gotta have it. And even if you got it wouldn't lead to contentment because the next it is just on the horizon. And that's the nature of the cycle. And somehow we need a reality shift. Now, please, look here just a moment. Quit counting the lights, all right, for just a second. Come back to me for just a second. There's nothing wrong with you. You're just living in an insane cycle. An insanity cycle that's driven by worry and leads every single time to discontentment. Now, here's the great thing, all right? Learning to be generous, not random acts of giving. We're all good at that. Learning to be generous, organizing your financial world around generosity crushes the consumption assumption. It gets you on the exit ramp off the insanity cycle. It gets you out of this way of thinking, if it comes to me, it's for me. If it's mine, it's for me. And learning to think differently. There's a shift in reality. Next week, I want to give you a plan. I know it's the week after Thanksgiving. You'll have so much turkey, you won't be able to stay awake. Please come, all right? Great plan coming for you next week, all right? But before we get to the practical side, you've got to learn to think differently. Because if we don't change our habits, we will just, doesn't matter what we earn, we'll still be in the cycle, all right? Generous people do not think this way of living. They come to terms with the, it's not about my consumption. They come to terms with, if it's to me, it's for me. In other words, they say, if it comes to me, it's not necessarily for me. They break through this whole Western way of thinking that's all about consumption. Let me tell you a story that Jesus tells. One day he's walking along with his guys, his posse, his group, all right? And they've just seen an example of a guy who wants more and more of an inheritance. And he comes and asks Jesus to help him out in it. And Jesus turns to his disciples, and it's kind of a teaching moment. So he tells a parable. You know what a parable is? Parable is, it's a story. It's not a true story. It's based on supposed events, and the whole purpose of a parable is to teach you a story. When I was a primary age, they used to say, it's an earthly story with a heavenly meaning, okay? But it has that idea in it, all right? So here's the parable. He said to them, watch out. Ooh, when Jesus says that, you need to start looking around. And then he says, be on your guard against all kinds of, what's that next word? Greed. But there's no greedy people in this room, so it doesn't matter to us, right? All right. So we all know that we are greedy, right? Not in the basement counting our gold, but we think it's for me. He says a man's life does not consist in the abundance of his possessions. We buy into that pretty big time. We buy into it big time. We believe that life is all about the toys we get, right? The guy who dies with the most toys wins. You've heard that before, right? And we put all of our money into that idea, and the idea of getting more and more consumable goods. I'm not saying that having a nice car, house is wrong or anything like that. I'm just saying the consumption of assumption is it's all mine. And Jesus says your life does not consist in the abundance of his possessions. So he tells this parable. He says this. Go on to the next one. The ground of a certain what kind of man? Rich. So this guy's already rich. He's got an abundance of possessions. And as often happens, the rich get what? Richer. Well, you've heard that before too, all right? So the rich get richer. So this guy has this let's go back again. The ground of the certain rich man yielded what kind of harvest? Abundant harvest. That means, woo, it came in big time. His harvest was better than it ever been before. He got a bonus check out of all of his investments. His land produced great stuff. It's got 2 oil wells, a gas well. Plus, not only that, it contributed 600 bushels of wheat an acre, okay? Everything went good with this guy. And so he has this abundant harvest. He is rolling in more dough. The rich got richer, okay? Here's what he says. So he said to himself, what shall I do? You've done that too. You've gotten a raise? You've gotten a bonus? What do I do with this? I go buy a TV. I add on to my house. Well, that's a possibility. All those things are possibilities. What shall I do? It's all about me? Well, I don't know. I have no place to store my crops. So he's going, I need to build a bigger house. I need to have one with a basement and an attic so I can store more stuff in it. I need to have more storage barns. Anything wrong with that? No. Sometimes that can be very prudent. But he says, then he said, this is what I'll do. Have you ever seen the little light come on? Have you ever felt like that in your life? The little light comes on. This is what I'll do. And what he's going to do is going to be something much like you and I would do. Probably exactly like it. The more money you make doesn't mean you'll change anything at all. It's what he's always been doing. He's going to continue to do what he currently did. And that's what you did. Let me put a pause real quick. if you're in your 20s or 30s right now, if you can get what I'm saying about this cycle, and you can break out of that cycle, you will have, when you get my age, you'll have a whole lot more income. And if you're currently doing this, that's the right thing to do, okay? And in the end, you will have given more, you have saved more, and you will have consumed less. And Jesus says, you'll be happy, 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 all right? So this guy did what he's always done before. He thinks, if it's mine, if it came to me, it's for me. And so it didn't make him more generous that he got richer, right? We all think, if I just won then I would give, right? Wrong assumption. If you win the whatever amount is in the lottery right now, you will continue your spending habits just like you're doing right now. You'll just add more zeros in it because it's a consumption assumption that you live by, all right? This guy has that same thing. So he says, I'm going to build more barns, and I'm going to build larger ones, and all those things so that I can consume them later. He's going to have a savings account, which is good, but he's going to do it all so he can consume it all later. It's all for him. Every bit of it's for him. He doesn't take anybody else into consideration. So he's going to tear them down. He's going to build bigger ones and store his grains. That's not a bad idea, business-wise, but he still thinks it's all for him. So Jesus, go ahead. And I'll say to myself, I love this, self, you ever had those conversations? Self, you have plenty of grain laid up for how many years? Many years. So what are you going to do? Take life easy. Eat, drink, and be merry. Man, that is retirement. You've got the golden parachute, all right? You're the golden guy. You got everything you need for the future, and you're going to stock it away, and it's going to be just where you are. Self, you've got plenty of grain. Now, many of us, if you go back 20, 30, for some of us 40 years ago, and somebody told you how much money you'd be making now, you would have thought, oh my gosh, I could have lots of kids then, you know. Ooh, I could have more and more and more and more. We can't imagine. And now that we're making the amount that we can't imagine, we still got the worry, don't we? Because we've not changed the habit any. Quick story. My first church that I served in, new church plant. I was still a student in college. Tree and I got married when we were 12. And so they were concerned about me. They bumped my salary from I can't remember, I think it was like $50 a week to $75 a week. And for that, I drove over 500 miles each weekend, you know. And they gave me this raise, and they said, we're going to give you $10 more a week. And they said, but we're going to put it into an account for your retirement. I'm 20 years old. I'm 12 years old. I'm sorry. I'm 20 years old. And I thought, who needs retirement? I need the $10 now. Gas had just gone from 20 cents a gallon to $1 a gallon. And I was freaked out about that whole situation because I was driving 150 miles a weekend. And so they figured up on this $30 or $40 a month that they were going to put in, that when I retired, I would have a retirement of between $500 and $600 a month. And I'm thinking, I'm going to be rich. Are we rich at $500 and $600 a month now? But I couldn't imagine making that amount of money because I was not making that kind of money. I thought that would sustain me forever and ever. Eat, drink, and be merry type of thing. I made that type of money not at least 20 years later, and was still spending on my same habit. I was not saving anything. I was not giving more, but I was consuming a whole lot more, and I was not happy. But I was worried. And so Jesus says to this guy the same thing that he says to all of us when we find ourselves in this insanity cycle. God said to him, you want to read those two words? You do it with a little Mr. T attitude, all right? You what? You fool, all right? Do you guys not know who Mr. T was? First service, this crowd over here, all the senior high, didn't know who he was either. Okay. So he says, you fool. Now, was he calling him a fool because he got more crops? No. Was he calling him a fool because he was rich? No. He said, you're a fool because you assumed that all that stuff that you got was for your consumption. You assumed it was all for you. And he says, you fool, this very night, your life will be demanded for you. Do you remember the quote that he gave early? Eat, drink, and be merry. What's the rest of that quote that wasn't included? For tomorrow you may die. For this guy, it was tonight, all right? He thought everything he had was for him, all right? And he said, this is all for me. I have everything, this is all for me. And it's for my consumption and my consumption only. Now, goes on and says, then who will get what you've prepared for yourself? In other words, this guy has put all this back, he's stored it up, he's hoarded it up, and it's all going to be for him. Who will get what you've prepared for yourself? The answer is what? Somebody else. Somebody else. Somebody else is going to get it. Why? Because he was generous? No, because he's dead. Well, he is. He was consumable. He was disposable. And all that stuff he saved up for himself to consume, somebody else gets to consume it. And Jesus kind of steps back out of the parable, and he looks right into your eyes, he looks right into my eyes, and he says this. He says, this is how it will be. Future tense. This is how it will be. What we just experienced together with this guy is what it will be. And what is this? It's a total loss. Everything that you have planned for, everything that you have consumed, that you've put up, all of your possessions that you have, at some time, you're not going to be in control of them. Somebody else is going to get them. My daughters were all home this summer for a period of time, and one daughter, my middle daughter, who always has sarcastic things to say, I can't imagine where she gets it from, but she says, Dad, when are you guys going to start going through some of your stuff and clean it out? I don't want to, when you die, come in and have to clean all this stuff up. That hurt. Reality slap. I've got a bunch of books. I have a book addiction. I've rarely seen a book I don't like. Okay? And I've got scads of books in our home. If you've walked through my two offices, my counseling office and my study office, you'll see I've got lots of books on the shelf. I've got books on the floor. Books are a good thing to have. They're a wonderful thing. But you know who's going to consume them when I die? Girls probably don't like some of the books that I read. We'll never read them. Somebody else will. Will I have control over that? No. You fool. Buying books wrong? No. Great investment. But only if they're not just for yourself. And so Jesus says, this is how it'll be for whoever, all of us in this room, all of us, for whoever stores up things for themselves that are not rich toward God. The consumption assumption is it's all for me. Every bit of the possessions, they're for me. My comfort, my enjoyment. But he says if you're not rich towards God, what does that mean? Does that mean rich towards God mean that I give God my time? Well, yeah, that's true, but that's not what he's talking about here. Does it mean that I give him my talent? Well, yeah, that's true, but it's not what he's talking about here. Now, Jesus is very clear. Rich towards God is giving your stuff away. And he couldn't be any clearer. How can I be rich towards you, God? Through my prayer life? Yeah, but that's not what he's talking about. Serving? Yeah, but that's not what he's talking about. Those are all good things. But the way Jesus says, be rich towards me, is you give your stuff away. That you don't assume that everything you have is yours. That's the bottom line assumption. We think it's mine, 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 mine. And that's the fundamental issue. Generous people do not assume it's theirs to consume. And what is brilliant about this teaching of Jesus is that Jesus defies the notion of ownership. Who's going to get it all? Are you going to get it? You won't have it. Not yours. Because if it can be taken away, you never really owned it anyway, right? It can be taken away, you never really owned it. And you know what's insane? It's pretending that you and I are the owner while we worry, spend, get in debt, and have no financial margin, and worry. And we need to shift in reality. What's insane is living your whole life like you own stuff and it's yours to consume. And the reality, not the myth, but the reality is stated for us in several verses of the Bible. Psalm 24 says this, the Lord, what's that word? Owns. He owns the earth and all it contains. Anything in your driveway, anything in your closet, anything in your bank account, God owns it. And the world and all who live in it. He owns you. And what he gives to us from his hand is on loan. And we are to manage it. That's a stewardship term, all right? We are to manage it for him. Not for us, but for him. First Chronicles says this, both riches and honor come from you, talking about God. And God, you rule over all, and in your hand is power and might, and it lies in your hand to make great and to strengthen everyone. We like the possessions. We like to consume things because we think it brings us honor. And people go, man, look at that car he drives. Look at that jacket that he's got on this morning. I think it's pretty nifty, don't you think so? It was cold this morning, so I went back in and put it on. All right? So, it's an assumption we make. And Jesus says the assumption is false. You don't own it. You get to manage it. It comes from God. But I've worked really hard. I mean, I've worked so hard to accumulate all this debt. I'm asking you to make a shift in reality. Generous people know that ownership is really a myth. Generous people realize the consumption always leads to discontent and worry. So here's what I want you to do, okay? Just for a week, and it's a great week to do it. This is, what happens on Thursday? Thanksgiving, right? How many of you like the holiday of Thanksgiving? My favorite. Turkey and football. It doesn't get much better than that, does it, okay? That's consumption, and I'm basing it on an assumption, all right? So here's the deal. On Thanksgiving week, which is all about gratitude, one of my favorite holidays because it's not about, you can't hype a bunch of pilgrims, okay? And so it's all about thanking God for his provisions. So this week, during Thanksgiving week, all right, here's what I want you to do. The best of your ability, I want you to shift your reality and think about your stuff differently. Make a reality shift. And practice being thankful for what you have rather than complaining about what you don't have. You see, contentment plays such a huge, whole big part of it. When we begin to understand that God has given me what I need, and I say thank you, it begins to break some of that thing I must have for me. Just a week to think about when you look at your stuff, when you walk into your house and you realize, okay, one day my kids are going to come in and they're going to take every bit of this out and they're going to go, why in the world did they keep this? That's my favorite book. Right? Once you realize somebody somewhere is going to pack it all up, sell it, trade it, burn it, they're going to do something with it. Not what you want to have to do with it, but you're not in control anymore. It was only a myth that you're in control of it now. And you think to yourself, what would it feel like to be emancipated? What would it feel like to live free? To live in the light of the reality that I am not an owner, I'm a manager. God has created you not just to consume, not to be a consumer. He created you with intelligence. He created you with the ability to make money. He created you with the ability to have some talent and to invest in other people. And when you begin to organize and center your life around generosity, then you will give more, save more, consume less. And not only will you be happy, 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 you know what else? At the end of your life, God will not say, "You fool." Oh, it got real quiet. That's okay, because that's a reality slap. Would you pray for me with me? Father, reality shifts are never comfortable. And I thank you for your mercy in this area of our life. I thank you, Father, for bringing those slaps and the ability to make shifts into our life. And I pray, Father, that this week we will look at the stuff we have and say, thank you, and realize we don't own it. And we can see how we can use it for your greater good so that we can be rich toward you, that your kingdom may grow. Father, I pray that your grace would be upon every life here, and that every life in this room, Father, would realize that they do have an owner. They have a creator, and he is the one that we owe our allegiance to. We pray this in Jesus' name. Amen. Our invitation this morning is an opportunity for you to make that acknowledgement that you have a creator. And one of the greatest joys in your life will become when you realize you are not your boss, but you've got one who created you and loves you more than you can possibly even love yourself, and more than anybody else loves you, and will help to remake your life into a life that is without worry and it's filled with content. If that's your decision that you need to make, we'd love to talk with you about this morning as we stand and we sing together.